Hello, I'm Dan Jones. Welcome to Interchange. We have lots of things to talk about today, so thanks for joining us. The presidential race keeps getting weirder. The Republican candidates continue to insult one another almost nonstop, but Donald Trump, to the surprise of many, remains way out in front. President Obama was in Milwaukee this week to brag about what he calls the incredible success of Obamacare, but the Republicans still say they'll do away with it if they get to the White House. And we'll talk about the Mitchell Park domes and whether that could end up being the major issue in the race for Milwaukee County Executive. All right, before we get going, please let me introduce everybody. You all know longtime newspaper columnist Joel McNally. Kevin Fischer, who spent many years here as a broadcast journalist, many years after that as a legislative staffer over in Madison. Denise Callaway, former TV news reporter, now a communications and public relations professional. And Gerard, Randall, education and job creation consultant. Rick Horowitz will be along with commentary at the end of the show. All right, let's talk first about the presidential race. On the Republican side, it's almost surreal and bizarre to watch, with the candidates insulting each other, making crude jokes about one another. Establishment types like John McCain and Mitt Romney came out and blasted Donald Trump this week, but I'm not sure that Trump supporters care less what any of the establishment types think. How is this going to change or get even more bizarre?
It is getting more bizarre by the day. I mean, truthfully. Most of today I spent reading commentary from conservatives, Republicans, appalled, embarrassed that not just Donald Trump, but all of their candidates in the debate were like children on a playground and making, jokes about. I mean, Donald Trump has boasted about most things connected to himself, but to boast about the size of his genitalia on national television in a presidential debate, this is appalling. I know that, Gerard is going to say, as he said every week, Republicans are not going to nominate him. Well, as a matter of fact, they are. And it's getting closer and closer to that, and Republicans are realizing that's why Mitt Romney did what he did. And they did it to themselves. This party committed suicide by intentionally going after crude, racist, ignorant voters over the years, ever since the Democrats, stopped in the South, stopped opposing civil rights and started supporting civil rights, and Southern Democrats became racist Southern Democrats became racist Southern Republicans. Jesse Helms, Strom Thurmond, people like that. The Republican Party intentionally went after those white racist voters, and here's what they get. They get a leading presidential candidate who is going to be nominated by their party, who is intentionally going after racial bigotry, religious bigotry, standing up in public and talking about let's bring back torture and things worse. And even worse, he's an ignorant man. He knows nothing about the world. He makes up things. He makes up facts. And now the other Republicans are starting to call him on that. The last two Republican presidential candidates are denouncing him. The Republican Party is destroying itself, and it did it to itself.
Then how you do keep saying he is not going to get the nomination. So if he keeps winning these primaries, how does he not get the nomination?
I'm just amazed at how apoplectic people get when Trump doesn't even have a third of the number that he needs in order to get the nomination at this stage in the game.
Except every election he wins more than everybody else.
Well, he never gets more in terms of the popular vote.
He gets a plurality. He doesn't get a majority.
35% or so. And the rest of the candidates, the rest of the candidates, as their numbers winnow down to two, maybe even one candidate, you're going to see that Trump inertia or initiative kind of dissolve itself. He's still going to hold on to those people that are enamored with him.
Yep.
And frankly, I don't know that the party even wants that group of folk. But the party will maintain its integrity. It'll maintain its platform and a candidate that fully supports that platform, and it won't be Donald Trump. If it ever got to the point, well, first off, I'm not going to convince you two any more than I'm going to be able to convince those folk that support Trump to support somebody else. It's not going to happen.
Right.
The party's come to that realization. And
but
overall,
they can't stop him.
They can't.
There is a way to stop him.
There are whole lots of ways to stop him. And I think that he's going to actually stop himself. At some point, all those folk in those states that are moderate states, and those states are coming up, are going to turn out and they're going to support other candidates in enough numbers to defeat Trump and make sure that he doesn't get any of those states.
About suggesting that the other candidates get out. You don't want Kasich to get out. You want him to win Ohio. You don't want Rubio to get out. You want him to win Florida.
Did I say I wanted them out? I said
that. You said as they lose more candidates, he'll do worse.
You want,
in fact,
you want Rubio to win Florida, you want Kasich to win Ohio, and that gets you a deadlock convention. That's one scenario. The other scenario is that people just come to their senses and they come out in the numbers that are supporting those candidates that are actually sensible candidates and drop Trump down to second, third, fourth. And I see that scenario happening more than anything
I see it as a scenario. I just don't see it as a scenario that's going to happen. I think Donald Trump is a candidate who, while he probably hit the height of his foolishness last night, oh, God, I would certainly hope so. I don't, when he has said things where people said, wow, that's so out there, he's definitely going to fall in the polls. People are going to stop voting for him. And it hasn't happened. And I think that is because for a group of people out there, Donald Trump says what they're thinking. And it appeals to them to have someone who shares their views and will say it out loud to be their candidate. I agree with you, Gerard. Those people are not going to change their minds. The problem that we have as a country and that Republicans have in particular is that there are lots of other people on those Super Tuesday states who share that same point of view and will come out to see him. I will tell you, I think what has happened with Donald Trump's candidacy is that he has actually probably motivated some people who would not get out in the primaries to actually come out and vote because they agree with what he says and they agree with what he thinks. I think the danger for the Republican Party, and Rice Preeper said just this afternoon, make no mistake about it, the person who gets the most votes is going to be our candidate.
Kevin, as a longtime former journalist, do you think the media is fair in its coverage of Donald Trump? Whether you like him or not, every single newspaper always has an article every single day. How is Trump going to be stopped? You know, is he crazy? Blah, blah, blah.
There is, and my colleagues would agree, that there's a wolf pack mentality in journalism that dates back decades, that if somebody else is reporting one way, well, we got to do it the same way. And they've got that story, we've got to report on that story. Is it fair? Well, no, it's not fair, because there one time were 16 other candidates, and they never got the attention that Donald Trump got because Donald Trump was so outrageous and Donald Trump was so bombastic. But we're talking about the inevitability of his nomination. It's not inevitable, especially if he doesn't steamroll in the next week or 10 days.
Or it could be over in the next week.
It could be. I will give you that. But if you go to the convention where he does not have the 1,237 delegates, then all bets are off.
He's yet to win one state that's been a closed primary state like Oklahoma, where only Republicans can vote in those primaries. So for all of the folk that really think that he's just going to push his way like a bully into the convention and be able to walk away with the nomination, I don't see it happening.
If you look at the numbers, it's clear cut. There are far more anti-Trump Republicans voting than pro-Trump Republicans.
And they will stop.
The other candidates don't have more delegates than he does.
It's overwhelming.
But the other candidates altogether do not have as many delegates as he does.
Right, and
so you're wrong about that.
He doesn't have even a third of the delegates yet.
And we're not through Super Tuesday yet. Things are going to change on Super Tuesday.
I agree, then that would be very sad, but it's not inevitable.
It is inevitable. If he has the majority of delegates coming in, I think the Republican Party is in
But if he doesn't have the 1,237, it's anybody's game then.
He won't get it.
He would not win in a brokered Republican convention, which Republicans don't want to see. That would be catastrophic.
Right, and I don't think you're going to have a brokered convention. I think you're going to have.
You're hoping Trump gets it.
You know, really, I do not.
A lot of people on our side hope he doesn't get it, but they're terrified that he will. And but you deserve it, I'll tell you.
All right, let's talk about the current president. Milwaukee was in the national spotlight the other day when President Obama came here to brag about the success of his Affordable Care Act, getting more and more people insured. When you have millions of people now covered under Obamacare policies, you have to wonder if it really would be at all possible to repeal and replace it like some Republicans say they would like to do. Has this become part of our national portrait now, Kevin, just like Social Security, Medicare, not easily undone?
Let's hope not. And let's put an end to Obamacare piece by piece by piece by electing the proper Republican in November. You know, the president comes to town and he jokes about the Packers and brats and Lambeau Field and tailgaters. But what he doesn't tell you is that Obamacare has been, you know, a litany of broken promises, one after another. The president says if you want to keep your doctor, you can keep your doctor. Thousands of people found that was not the case. If you want to keep your plan, you can keep your plan. Thousands of people found out that wasn't the case either, and many of them found that their plan was canceled. He said he wouldn't support any plan that would add a dime to the deficit. Well, the Congressional Budget Office says that in the next decade, it's going to add $1.35 trillion to our deficit and debt. He said it would reduce the average family's medical costs by $2,500 a year, when in reality, their deductibles and their premiums are going sky high.
Do you think
just this week, National Public Radio and the Robert Wood...
No.
May I? I understand you don't want to hear this stuff, but it's true.
No, it's not true.
Just this week, the NPR and the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation came out with a survey where 41% of Wisconsinites say that under Obamacare, their costs are becoming more unaffordable during the past 2 years, and it's a job killer. Right here in Milwaukee, Assurant Health Insurance, major insurance company, last year said that they had to close. Their executive said the main reason was trying to meet the challenge of operating under Obamacare. 1,200 jobs in the Milwaukee area gone. So you know, he can come to town and brag about how many people he got to sign up for, you know, another government handout. Sure, they signed up because you get fined, you get penalized if you don't sign up. So if that's a victory, that's a pretty shallow one.
10 years from now, is this more than anything else what Barack Obama will be known for?
Yes, and what we will see is what we are seeing now and what we heard about when the president was in town. That is people whose lives are literally saved because they can now afford or access health insurance, and they could not before Obamacare. You can throw a lot of hyperbole around about what Obamacare isn't, but you need to take a look at what it is. It is a way for underinsured or uninsured Americans to be able to access health care. What has happened under Obamacare is we've actually seen a reduction in the amount of growth that we have seen and the inflation that we've seen in healthcare. Healthcare costs are actually starting to go down now, and it is because more people are insured. We take a look at what happens to our local health systems. There was a story in the Journal Sentinel a couple of weeks ago that talked about how these are companies that are actually seeing higher rates of profit because more people have insurance and they have less bad debt. So we can see locally here that we have more people who have health insurance, which means more people are getting better care. Fewer folks are going into the hospital being either unable to afford the care that they need or walking away and leaving, quite frankly, the rest of us with insurance to pay those additional costs. Is Obamacare perfect? No, but it certainly outpaces anything that the Republicans have been able to come up with as an alternative to it. You can talk about repealing something as much as you want, but the issue that we have right now is that there are people who are using Obamacare, people who may not be using the marketplace for their health care insurance, but see some of the benefits that happen. Senior citizens who no longer have to worry about a donut hole where they can be paying thousands and thousands of dollars out of pocket because of Medicare and the way that was structured. Children who now are young adults struggling to be able to find jobs are staying in school longer. They're now able to be covered on their parents' health insurance. So, we take a look at what Obamacare has done, and the reality of it is it has made people healthier. It has made people safer, and it's taken some of our very fragile health insurance companies here in Wisconsin, and it's really helped to boost them up.
Is it realistic when you hear a Republican candidate stand up there and say, we're going to repeal and replace it?
It's realistic. It'll certainly, if you have a Republican president, you'll also have a Republican Congress and a Republican Senate. And so repeal and replace is going to happen.
They haven't gotten with anything to replace?
Well, that's not true. Every challenge to our healthcare system that had been identified prior to President Obama becoming president had a far, far better fix than what the president put in place. It was a stalking horse for a single-payer system, which,
yes,
even though Kevin has outlined a whole litany of problems with Obamacare, would be far worse for this country if we had that single-payer system. Denise, you point out all those things that the rosier outlook of Obamacare. I'm with Kevin on this. It has cost far more money. Fewer people. Look at the number of younger people that have refused to go into the system. Look at the number of folks, small business owners that have said they're not going to pay for the health care plan. They'd rather pay the tax, and they find the tax obnoxious as it is. So, all of these things, and they haven't enrolled the numbers that they need in order to sustain it. They haven't enrolled the numbers they need to sustain it, which is why the major healthcare companies like United Healthcare are backing out of it, because they've taken long-term projections and made note of the fact that they would lose far more money. They may have made money now, but they're going to lose far more money in the long haul the longer they stay into this system as it's currently planned.
Do the opponents not like Obamacare, or do they simply not like Obama?
Oh, they don't like a black president. They don't like Obama. They don't like health care. Imagine that. You two put out so many lies just now. Let me just
name one.
Let me answer two of them.
Name two.
Two of them. Here's one: job killer. Didn't happen.
Sure.
Did you just see the economic report today, where, as usual, every month there's an announcement that the economy is getting better and better.
And 90 million people are still unemployed.
Please,
93 million people are out of work.
Let me answer this. Not only is it getting better and better, but one of the fields that is leading in job gains is healthcare. And part of it is what Denise mentioned, that profits are going up in healthcare. When profits go up in healthcare because more people are insured, that is going to mean both more employment and also more competition and lower prices. Let me mention the other thing that you always make a big deal of, the mandatory buying of insurance. Let me mention the best thing about Obamacare: pre-existing conditions are covered. Before, a whole lot of people with horrible health problems couldn't get insurance because they had a pre-existing condition. Now they can. Republicans claim they're going to continue that if they ever make up something to replace it. But let me tell you this: would you please not talk?
I know you never interrupt me. Go ahead. Go ahead.
As a matter of fact, you can't cover pre-existing conditions without having mandatory buying of health insurance, because there wouldn't be any reason for anybody in America to buy health care until they got sick.
Which, by the way, is arguably unconstitutional, forcing people to buy health insurance.
Until they got sick, they wouldn't have to buy insurance.
All right.
And we can't just cover sick people. Insurance doesn't work that way.
Next topic. The repair work continues on the Mitchell Park Observatory. It's expected to cost $1 million just to make temporary repairs. The goal is to have one dome open by May, the other by the end of the other two by the end of the year. They are still putting together estimates as to the cost of permanent repairs or possible replacement. This could figure to be a major issue in the race for Milwaukee County Executive, especially in a community where they are considered an iconic part of Milwaukee County.
I believe it's an iconic part of the county, and more disturbing to me is that the canary in the coal mine kept singing the tune that you need to make these domes safer, and evidently that was not listened to, and in the current administration, Abley's administration, had taken the responsibility for making sure that the domes were safe. I saw the county executive on TV talking about how his administration wants to make sure that anyone who visits the domes can go there safely. Well, he's had 4 years plus in order to ensure that. Even his own administration has said that they gave the warnings, they asked for the funding. The board didn't turn down any funding request. What happened was a delay in implementation of whatever funds were available to make those domes safer. And now we've gotten to the point where the whole community realizes that the cost is going to be somewhat insurmountable. And the question will be, are we willing to pay that?
Are they setting the foundation now, Denise, so that they can, in a few years, say, okay, here's the cost, we're going to have to replace these things, we cannot repair them to last for another 50 years. Who's going to come up with the money?
Well, I think perhaps that's one of the things that's being done. I mean, certainly we would hope that their timeline for kind of figuring this out one way or the other is much quicker than that. But the issue about the domes, and it's not just the domes, it's other parts of the Parks Department, it's other infrastructure that we have. It's not just under Chris Abele that there has been a reluctance to raise taxes to the rate that they have to be raised to maintain these infrastructures. It goes back to previous county executives. So this idea that suddenly, 4 years ago, oh, well, the dome's in really awful shape, we got to do something about it. That was something that has gradually happened over the years, particularly when we take a look at our Parks Department. That's why Sue Black was recognized through the work that she did to go out and raise the money in the private sector, because the public sector was not willing to take care of its responsibility. And quite frankly, that's what our parks are, whether we're talking about the domes or the golf course at Brown Deer or soccer field in Franklin. It's our responsibility as citizens of this community to take care of it. And we had politicians who were more interested in keeping some kind of no tax pledge than they were in their fiduciary responsibility to take care of these treasures in our community. We ought to be able to find a way to spend the money to do this. I don't know how many people recall, we did have a referendum where we agreed to pay more money to support
51-49%.
Yeah, but it's still, that's still a majority. I don't know what kind of math y'all learned, but in Indiana, we learned that still makes it a majority. So there's a willingness on part of people in this community to be able to do it. The shame is that we didn't take advantage of that now, and we're going to pay for it, both in terms of loss of access to these treasures, as well as the fact it's going to cost us more money to take care of property that has continued to deteriorate in the years since that referendum was passed.
Kevin, only 30 seconds. But then we saw the headline again the other day, oh, we might need a new courthouse at a cost of $180 million or something.
Well, I'm sorry, the taxpayer, it's not a bottomless pit of money. You can't keep going to the taxpayer time and time again and saying
they're willing to pay.
We're going to raise taxes, but I think Chris Abele is right. You have to look at all the options, including one that I would not be in favor of, that I would not like, is to tear those things down, and that comes with a cost too.
That's the one he said he supported.
And then there are cost overruns. It's up to the public. It's up to their elected officials to decide what they want and to what degree. And I hope they find a way to save the domes, but you're going to need private sector money, not just taxpayer money.
All right, we move on. All right, back to the GOP side of the presidential race. There have been so many controversies swirling around Donald Trump recently. It's hard to remember whether it was just last weekend that he got in trouble, including with fellow Republicans, for what he did or didn't say about a famous racial hate group. Rick Horowitz found the back and forth interesting. Rick.
On summer days when we were kids, we'd sometimes pluck blades of grass, crease them just so, hold them lengthwise between our thumbs, and blow. We couldn't hear a thing, but sometimes off in the distance we'd hear barking. Who knew we were training to be Republican politicians? Dog whistle politics, that's what it's called when you make your pitch for votes at a frequency most people can't hear or understand. But for the target audience, say white folks who can't stand black folks, they read it loud and clear. That's the whole idea. And that's the backstory to this fuss over Donald Trump's reluctance to condemn the Ku Klux Klan and reject the praise of former Klan leader David Duke. He forgot to keep it subtle. Now, Donald Trump is not a subtle man, and this is not a subtle Klan, but that's the point. one great achievement of the modern-day GOP, the party formerly known as Lincoln's, has been its ability to stir up and profit from racial fears and resentments, but with deniability. The late Lee Atwater, when George H.W. Bush, the refined one, outsourced his nasty, Atwater was his guy. Lee Atwater once explained how the so-called Southern strategy had evolved over time. They couldn't use that very vilest of racial slurs anymore, they realized. The word had started to backfire, he said. So they turned instead to more abstract phrasing, he said, like states' rights or forced busing. Nothing too blatant. And it's been that way ever since. So Paul Ryan condemning Trump on the Klan thing and saying, this party does not prey on people's prejudices, we appeal to their highest ideals. Actually, they do both, but only one of them in public. And Marco Rubio saying Donald Trump will never be the nominee of the party of Lincoln and Reagan. Maybe he forgot that when Ronald Reagan made his successful White House run in 1980, he chose to launch his fall campaign in Philadelphia, Mississippi, the infamous place where 3 civil rights workers had once been murdered. And on that day in Philadelphia, Mississippi, Ronald Reagan spoke in praise of states' rights. Subtle, huh?
Thanks, Rick, and thank you so very much for watching. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.